Welcome to Coach and the Coach. I'm your host, Coach KP, and with me is my willing accomplice, my most trusted man, the brains behind most things in my world today, my buddy JC. JC, welcome to the show, brother. How are you today?
Dude, you're in trouble if I'm the brains behind anything. You're already screwed.
That's right. Hey, folks, we got a great guest today. He's a mutual friend of ours. We've in a very unique, non-official way, kind of, I guess you could say, have been in business together. And I say that without the legalese aspect of things, but we've done a lot together for several years now. He's a good friend of ours. He's a diehard supporter of what we're doing. He is the founder / co-founder of an amazing organization that is about to launch here any day now, called the Second Mission Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, our buddy, Charlie Fain. Welcome to the show, Charlie.
Hey, Carrie, JC, thank you so much for having me on the show. I am very excited to be here and looking forward to a great conversation. So thanks a lot.
Well, and what Kerry wasn't able to, it would take an hour to list kind of all your accomplishments, but what I see you as is one of the last bastions of free speech for the veteran community. You give a voice with Havok Journal to veterans that no one else does, and it's a real voice. It's not the rah-rah level 7 berserker nonsense. It's not the Till Valhalla stuff. It's a real, thoughtful, all positions are welcome, all perspectives are welcome, which isn't always welcome by the readers. But that, I can't tell you what that's meant to me and those like me. You have given us a platform where we can be us, which looks different than what the American people think. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks, JC. That coming from someone like you, that's a hell of an endorsement. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, so Charlie, the reason we wanted you on the show today is one, coaching the coach, in part is presented through the Second Mission Foundation, and at the end of all of our shows, we see the nice little logo, Second Mission Foundation, and the statement is said, presented in part by the Second Mission Foundation. You're the guy behind that organization, and we just felt an obligation to allow you an opportunity to tell our audience what it's about, why it was created, and some of the goals and aspirations that you have through that mission. But before we get to that, I know you have a military background, you are a husband, you are a father, and you have children, adolescents who are engaged in sports. And as a man who is often called upon where nation comes first, unfortunately, how do you balance? Because let's face it, in today's society, we have a lot of broken homes. We have a lot of parents that are working multiple jobs. And a lot of times these kids don't have that balance within the adults around them to help get the kids where they need to be in fulfilling their dreams and goals and aspirations. So I know, as a former military guy, and as JC being a former military guy, if in my opinion, by the way, if a military person, if a military parent can manage this, I just have a hard time accepting that any civilian can't manage it and can't do it. Now, granted, our divorce rates are astronomical in the military and the law enforcement world, but there are guys like you who do it. And really, that's the biggest question that I have for you today is, how in the world do you balance this all out?
So I do a lot of things really poorly, Carrie, is what it comes down to. But you asked a lot of great questions there, and there's a lot to unpack with it. So I think that with coaching, with being in the military, with anything we do in life, it comes down to dedication. You make time for the things that are important. So I make the time for the things that I think are most important in my life, which of course is my family. My career is also very important to me, although I'm coming to the end of it. I'm in my 25th year service in the Army. I got about 3 more to go before they make me take off the uniform forever. but I couldn't do what I do without my spouse. My wife Lila was in the Army also for 10 years. We met through the ROTC program in college, and having a partner you can count on, much like you and JC with coaching the coach, having a partner that you can count on being dedicated to whatever it is you're working on are the two keys to success, in my opinion. So a lot of things that could be important to us, you kind of put on the back burner. Things that we do for ourselves, you set to the side for your children, for the mission, for the team, for whatever you're working on. So I think those are the two keys to success, just really being dedicated and being focused on what's important and having partners that you can trust moving forward.
So you brought up a point about the dedication and knowing what you want. How often do you take time? And I'm asking a very personal question. I understand that. But I think it's important for parents, teachers, coaches alike to really dissect deep down, because it's very easy for us to say, oh, you just got to be dedicated, or, oh, you just got to do the things that you feel are necessary and so forth. But it's not about you anymore. Yes, your career is about you, but it's not. It's really about your family.
That's right.
So my question is, like, my wife and I, we read to our kids every single night. We sit down as a family and we eat dinner every single night. And we don't wear our religion on our sleeves, but we hold hands before dinner and we say grace every single night. You know, it's just, that's how I was raised. That's how my wife was raised. And we believe in those family traditions, and we're doing our best to hold on to those things. But how often do you sit down with your children and say, hey, I want to know how school was, and listen to her or him and follow it up with, where do you want to be tomorrow? What can I do as a daddy to help you get there? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Where can I be better?
I think especially in the type of environment that we all live in today, it's so fast paced. You got to take those mentoring opportunities when you can. So one of the things that I do, in fact, I'm going to do in about an hour and a half, is I take my children to school in the mornings, and that you got a captive audience in there in the 20 minutes that it takes to get down the street to school. So in that conversation, what are you doing today? What's going on? Are there other kids being nice to you? Working hard? How are your grades going? And right now here in Hawaii, we're in final season. They're on a quarter system, so we're already taking my oldest is in high school. She's taking final exams. So how do you feel about your chem final? How is your AP history going? Whatever it is. And coming back from swim practice the same way. How does swim go? What are your times? What did coach tell you? Things like that. And in those little kind of sidebar conversations that seem like small talk, that's where you can interject the big things. Okay, what do you think about this that's going on in the world? Tell me about what you're thinking about where you want to go to school when you graduate from high school and things like that. So I think you seize those opportunities, those targets of opportunity, and exploit them for the benefit of the family and what you're trying to accomplish with your children. And Carrie, I was thinking about something that you said earlier when you opened this up about the importance of coaching and about being separated from the family and things like that. And I think that I know that you and JC and your audience knows this, but something that I've just been thinking about recently is the impact that coaches have as kind of a surrogate parent. Even if you have both parents in the picture, that coach is the parents on the field. And I mentioned in our earlier conversations that 2 years ago, my oldest played full contact co-ed football. She was the only girl on the West Point Junior Black Knights team. I think she was one of 3 girls on the team in the league in the entire county. And her coach was an Army warrant officer who was a former SEAL, and he was the superintendent's helicopter pilot. So this guy had an enormous amount of influence on Emily, treated her just like any other member of the team, developed her, smoked her when she needed it. And to this day, she still refers to him as coach. Anytime she sees a helicopter flying around, she says, hi, coach, even though obviously it's not her coach because he's retired now and living back east somewhere in Hawaii. But the life skills and the physical development and the interpersonal development that take place on these fields is so important to the future of our children. And I'm very grateful for Coach Mike and for all the coaches that teach our youth. So that's something I was thinking about when we were talking earlier, Kerry.
So
I still call my coaches from high school coach. Like, it's just ingrained in
my
my head.
my partner in business. You know, just won a championship, but coach, I knew him as a coach. I worked with him as a coach. I still call him coach. When I refer to him, I refer to him as a coach. But you said two things that I think are really important. One, and both important for coaches. And I'll do the what you said last. Is that idea of being the surrogate parent. You know, one of the best compliments that I ever had coaching youth sports was not meant as a compliment. And I've told Carrie this story. I was coaching my excuse me, my oldest son's lacrosse team, and after the practice was over, one of the fathers came up to me and said, "So which kid is yours? Because you treat them like they're all yours." And I said, "That's because for 2 hours they're all mine."
Yeah.
And I take that very seriously. He thought like, "Oh, you're treating them all like you own them." They're mine. It's that possessive. It's we talk about servant leadership, and I think that gets skewed a lot because sometimes you don't eat last, and sometimes you're not carrying bags for your people. And I'm I hate to say it, but I don't like the term servant leadership. I think what we want is possessive leadership. Your mind and your success is inherently tied to my being. I want you to be successful. So that idea of I own you, you're mine for that 2 minutes, just like my kids are mine. They're mine until they go off, and then they're still mine. And I'm invested in you. If you're not mine, why would I invest in you? It's like the difference between how do you drive a rental car? You drive a rental car like you stole it because it's not your car. But the car that you buy, you wax that sucker. You want to maintain the value. You ownership. Uh, this idea of possessive leadership has to be something that takes place. The second thing, and you displayed it perfectly, and based on kind of what you do and what you've done, that doesn't surprise me. But everything you did was about asking questions. It was about being curious. One of the things that coaches do, and it's inherent in the title coach, is coaches are expected to know all the answers. I provide you the answer, and then you execute that answer, and then we're a success. And there are times when coaches need to be more of an advisor. And advisors ask questions. Hey, what are you thinking? Hey, what do you think of this? I might have a perspective, but let me tell you let me tell you where I see this. But let me first find out, hey, what happened on the field there? Hey, what did you see? How are you feeling right now? Hey, what kind of coverage are they in? And it's from the tactical questions to kind of more the transformational questions that you're going, which is, hey, when you walked off the field, how did you feel at the end of that? Did you feel like you left it all out there, or was there something left in the tank? And how do you move on from there? But that curiosity is it's lost on coaches. I think they ask questions and they don't really want to know the answers. What happened? What were you thinking? And then it's right on. They don't really want to know what happened or what they were thinking. That's just a more polite way of saying, "Hey, dumbass, you did the wrong thing." And I think what you've displayed there is that, hey, question, 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 and just trying to understand so you can develop that empathy for that athlete.
Absolutely. And it's amazing what people will tell you if you just ask them questions. So
Yeah.
you start talking about X and all of a sudden they drop Y on you, which is this huge important thing that you didn't see coming and didn't know about. But because you expressed interest in him, you get that conversation going. Now you got rapport, you got trust, and now you know more. And I think especially non-commissioned officers in the military are especially good in that with their troops. I've seen that over the years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and things are progressing. I think with time, the smarter we as a society get, the more you're starting to see, especially when it comes to dealing with children. I have a spouse who is involved in special education. She's also a reading specialist, and when you look at somebody who went through those two types of programs, not even 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it's night and day. And there are teachers, there are educators out there that are constantly going through accreditation and continuing education to better themselves in learning how to work with children. What are the better ways? What are the ways that have failed? Blah blah blah. And yet, when it comes to coaching, it used to be that way. We used to have clinics. I remember, I'm telling you, I remember my father would go to clinics all the time. And nowadays, I'm seeing there's less and less clinics because people just claim there's no money involved or they don't want to spend the fee to go and so forth. And I think the more we can learn how to use social media to our advantage, especially like a show like this, for example, a coach could use a specific episode that we might air and use that as the clinic that he or she needs to help them in the way that they need to be helped. Or a parent could use this in the same regard. And I think that's one of the things that it's in a very unique way uplifting to me, because I think what we're doing is more than just interviewing people and providing insight. I think we're giving people an opportunity to take that insight and to capitalize on it as they deem fit for the children that they're trying to mentor and assist in life.
Absolutely. And you never know what little tidbit is going to be life-changing for somebody. And if you think about over the course of your career in coaching or being in the military or just being a parent, the number of times that someone will come back to you and say, hey, do you remember this? Because this is what it meant to me. And a lot of times you won't remember. I mean, that sounds like something I would say, but I have no recollection of it because it was such a just inherent part of your personality, of your being a coach, of being a leader or whatever, that you have no recollection of it. But then it was such an impact on this person, they remember 10, 15, 20 years later. So I think that's one of the many ways that coaches can influence our young people is to be that moral compass, to be that leader that they need at the time to ask those probing questions and to give that guidance that people need in order to be successful in the long run.
No, and I love it. And what I like most about it is I know that really is who you are. You're not just saying that for an audience. And the reason why I know that is because it is almost mirror image to your organization that you're creating, known as Second Mission Foundation. And you have three key words that you kind of like your log line, if you will. And it's educate, advocate, and elevate. It's interesting because with the guests that we've had on so far, they're saying basically those same three things that we as adults need to do for our children. And yet you want to do those same things for veterans who are transitioning out. It's almost as if in a very unique way, and I don't say this to any veteran that's belittling them or belittling you, but it's almost as if you're taking that fatherly role that you have with your own kids right now and trying to embrace your kids that are not biologically yours, but they're your kids whom you have seen through the ranks of serving our military. With that said, what are some of the ways the Second Mission Foundation is trying to make that impact through education, advocacy, and so forth?
Great. Carrie, you teed that up perfectly. I really appreciate you giving me the chance to talk about Second Mission. So we take a very holistic approach to who we're trying to serve through this organization. So as you mentioned, we're focused on veterans, but we're focused on veterans of what we consider the America's service community. So that's military veterans like you and JC and me, but it's also people who served as a first responder, either a police officer, EMT, et cetera. And we also include security contractors who work for the U.S. government in there as part of the America's service community. And we're looking to help those veterans transition and find their second mission after service to our country. So it is an embracive aspect of it. I considered retiring 2 years ago. I thought I was going to retire. You might remember this conversation. We talked about it in Havok. And I was going to go out. I was going to make some big money. I had some good job offers. And then for a variety of reasons, I decided to stay in a little bit longer. And what I saw through my own process of getting ready to transition and some of my very successful military friends who kind of struggled a little bit on the outside, I recognized that there was something missing in their lives after they took off the uniform for the last time. And the question for me was, how do we get that back? Well, we have to give vets a second mission. And that could be coaching, that could be in the clergy, that could be volunteer work, that could be through athletics. A lot of vets find solace in writing, but a lot of them find it on a long run, which I've never done personally. I hate running. It's my least favorite aspect of being in the military, actually.
Run when chased, baby. Just
Yeah,
run when
That's
exactly.
right. There's a reason why radios exist now. Just call it in.
So that's what we're trying to do through Second Mission. And we're a very, very new organization, as you know. Fortunately, a lot of people see a lot of potential in it, so we have a lot of money coming our way. 501(c) status is pending right now. I expect to have that back in a week or two. So what we're going to be able to do with that is continue our education process by helping vets be informed on the issues that are important to them. Of course, we do that through the Havok Journal and a lot of other great organizations out there that aren't affiliated with us but do the same thing. Task and Purpose is one, Coffee or Die is another one. So what we do is we're trying to educate the veteran community about things they should think are important. And JC mentioned earlier how we try to represent all sides of the argument, and we regularly post things that are rebuttals to pieces that I've written, or Carrie, you've written. You're familiar with this as well. A lot of other organizations don't do that. They take a position on an issue and that's it. But we recognize that the veteran community is not um, monolithic. There are a lot of views out there, and we try to represent all of them. So, and what we're trying to do with the Second Mission Foundation is represent everyone that's involved in America's service community and help those individuals find their way after service. So we do that by supporting educational outreach programs like the Warrior Scholar Project that's run by Yale University and a number of other organizations. We're hosting an event on the 11th of November in Colorado Springs, where Leo Jenkins and some of his guys are coming out to support their Verses and Curses tour. We're going to screen a new veteran-made movie there. So we're going to get the word out to people. We're going to help them tell their stories. And along that process, we're going to advocate for things that are important to veterans, like the GI Bill and the burn pit issue and things like that. And through all of that, we're going to help elevate America's veteran community. That's going to help vets, and it's going to help our country. So that's kind of the 2-minute elevator speech on what we're trying to do, Kerry.
So I know in the veteran community, and granted, I've been out of the service for quite some time now, but obviously I still say within arm's reach of those, that are part of it. But more and more, and this is just total honesty, I admit that a lot of the veteran community infuriates me. And I know that is the most unpopular thing that anybody could ever say. But there's a lot of negativity within the veteran community. There's a ton of depression within the veteran community. And according to whatever numbers the media throws out there, on average, we all know the number of 22 a day take their own lives and so forth. And I have issues with that too, because I think that's kind of misleading to some extent, even though it may not be. But with your organization, I hear the word uplifting. And to me, that's one of the most refreshing things in the world, because uplifting to me is a positive, not a negative. It's not an emphasis on the bad, if you will. It's not an emphasis on the horrors that we know exist within the veteran community. It's about the spirit of we are one, we are a community, and you're either still with us as a community and we're going to help you grow as a community, or you're going to make a decision to go solo or in your own little path, and you either make it or you don't. Good for you if you do. If you don't, hey, we're still here for you, but we would like for you to be a part of us anyway. We want you to come apart because there's things that we could do to empower you. And I think that's the next big word that I see on your site. It's empowerment. I know you said you have an association with Yale University. Are there any other universities or organizations out there that you are either directly in contact with or looking at in the future that you can link in with that would help fulfill that empowerment aspect of the organization?
Absolutely. So there are a number of organizations out there that are doing great things. Syracuse has got the Entrepreneurial Boot Camp for Veterans, which I hope to go to one day. I hear a lot of great things about that. But what we're finding out is the longer that we're in this space, there are a lot of little organizations out there that are doing not the same thing that we are, but a very similar thing that we're doing. So we're trying to reach out to those organizations and partner with them, because that's the way we grow the network. It takes a network to defeat a network, as General Crystal always says. And that's what we're trying to do now, is build out that network so we can get after these problems. And the enemy in this case isn't ISIS or Al Qaeda. It's depression, it's homelessness, it's PTSD, it's all these issues that affect America's service community that we can only address if it's a holistic effort. And Carrie, you mentioned the unpopular opinion about our fellow vets. I could not agree more with that. That might be unpopular, but it's not wrong. And I think that we are our own fiercest critics in the community because we know how we're supposed to act. We were in the military for X number of years. We know how we're supposed to act to each other. We know how we're supposed to act out in public. And when people don't do that, it's at least annoying all the way up the scale to infuriating. And one of the things that I try to help people work through that I don't appreciate is people who kind of embrace a dysfunctional veteran lifestyle. I don't want to be dysfunctional. I want to be highly functional. I want all my friends to be highly functional. And I don't think it does us or the community or America any favors to keep the American populace at arm's distance simply because they didn't serve in the military and we did. Because I think we all know that there are many ways to serve. The way that you, JC, and I chose to serve is one way. I think it's very important. I think it's essential. But it's only, at the end of the day, it's one way to serve the nation. So when we take off the uniform for the last time, we are civilians. Yeah, we're vets, but we're back in it. And it's time to integrate. It's not time to hold our fellow citizens at arm's distance. And it's time to move forward with our second mission, whatever that's going to be in life. And I know this is
and I don't mean to cut you off, but the truth is we're also unforgiving.
Absolutely.
And if you want to make it in the civilian world, you better learn, number one, you can't even ask for forgiveness until you look at yourself in the mirror and forgive yourself first. And you might not even realize you did something wrong, but every action has a reaction. And we just fail more often than not in looking at ourselves and holding ourselves responsible, where we like to play the sympathy card. And when you go into the civilian world, when you go in the civilian sector, especially, and I want to bring it back to our show a little bit here, but especially when you're dealing with loved ones, especially young children, whom you are supposed to serve as a role model to, forgiveness is one of the most powerful things you could ever teach a child. And you don't teach it through talking about it, you teach it through your actions.
All right. Well, let me jump in on a couple of things, because I'm with you all.
Yeah, you've been sitting quietly there.
I'm the sensitive guy here, and I have some empathy for these guys and girls who are trying to find an identity, right? So I've only been out I've retired for 4 years now, and spending a significant time, heck, even spending a limited amount of time in the force, because of what you do is so powerful and so purposeful, and our indoctrination is so powerful, you equate your being, your person with whatever you do, right? And I saw that, and it's absolutely true in the military. I see it with professional athletes as well. So here you are, this person, and whether you're just, and I don't want to say just, whether you're a mechanic or whether you're a battalion commander, that's kind of like, that's what I am. That's who I am. And then you move on, and you can say, and I said, I'm pretty well adjusted. I know who I am. You know what? You got to reinvent yourself. I mean, that's something that civilians have to do from time to time, but it's an absolute must for anybody that transitions. And again, I say this because I do think it ties to what we're saying, is because I looked at, two of my children, and my three. All three are phenomenal athletes. I have one that just graduated. She's coaching now. She's going to coach, but she's trying to figure out, what is she? If she's not an athlete, this is a woman who missed her, skipped her college graduation to go play in a national tournament. she saw herself as an athlete. What do you do when you're out? And that's not there anymore. My son, who certainly identified as, hey, this is what makes me, and there's a whole bunch of reinforcing things on the positivity of that. So when we bring it back to soldiers, I think there's a lot of bravado to identify that way because it's a hard thing to get rid of, and it's one removed. It's only one removed. It's one thing to go, well, I was a soldier, but now I run a 501c3. I was a soldier, but now I'm a consultant that has nothing to do with guns as opposed to the gun club, right? I, I think that it's really hard. And I think what I love about what you're doing here, and I kind of look at you as I might not say father figure, I might say coach. I might say you're the coach for these guys who are, and I'm probably going to want to talk to you because even you actually just republished something that I just reread about taking kind of what was it? Oh, a vision quest
Yeah.
after 3 or 4 years, right? So I'm hitting my 4th year and had it was a high trajectory up, and now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I did all that stuff. I have no idea what the heck's going to happen next. I don't know what to do. Um, and almost feeling like you're starting back at the bottom. And I think athletes face this, right? Youth players who, they're great athletes, and then they get to the high school level, and they're, and I've got my son who's playing football in college. He goes from being, the best, breaking all these school records, killing it. Oh yeah, okay. Now you're like the fourth string walk on, and you'll get 3 reps of practice if you're lucky. And last year, this year he's on the travel squad, but that was such a tough time for him, and he was trying to identify. So I think it's similar. So how do you, whether it's an athlete, I said a lot of stuff now, so that made up for all the quiet. How do you take that athlete, and in our case, we're going to call him a tactical athlete because that's what you're going to coach as a tactical athlete. How are you going to coach them and get them past that hump of, and I'm less worried about the right out of the service because there's already a support system. People forget about the guys who are 3 and 4 years removed.
Yep.
The support system disappears.
Absolutely. So first of all, that Vision Quest article that you mentioned was written by one of my favorite Havok Journal authors. It was Carrie Patton. It's one of Carrie's old pieces. So Carrie, that was a brilliant piece. Thanks for letting us run that.
So, I wasn't going to plug them, but I appreciate the plug.
Yeah, don't ever plug me. I only plug you guys. Don't plug me.
So that's that heck of a question you asked, JC, and I think the answer is it's going to be different for everybody. So like when my wife left the Army, she was in for 10 years, and she served in a lot of units that I served in. She was in the 2nd Infantry Division with me in Korea. We did that for 2 years. She's in the 101st Airborne Division, and she was in JSOC with me for a couple of years. So her takeaway from the military, she walked away content because she knew that she wanted to be a mother. So we had our first child back then. Emily was born when my wife was still serving. The war was going on, as we all were at the time. I was bouncing back and forth to Iraq and Afghanistan. She was on the hook to go, who's going to take care of our kid. I didn't think it was my mother or her mother's responsibility to raise our children, so she got out. And I think she adapted better than I've seen a lot of other people adapt. This probably better than I would have adapted at the time because she already had her second mission. She knew she wanted to be a mom. But obviously being a mom isn't going to be everybody's thing. A lot of people that get out of the military, perhaps most of them, after a term or two are single, so they don't have a spouse, they don't have a child. And I think we've got to work with them to help them find whatever it is that's going to be next for them. And JC, you brought up a great point, which is something that's been kind of in the back of my mind, but I've never really articulated, is what happens in the long run to these veterans. So we talk about the 22 a day, whatever that number actually is. And a lot of people think that those are recent vets, and some of them are, but if you look at the numbers, those aren't recent vets. Those are guys that, like you say, JC, have been out for a while. So how do we reach them and help them find their second or third or fourth mission to help them to adapt afterwards?
Yeah. A lot of what we speak about, one of our previous guests was Pastor Kyle Horner, who does a lot of work with Carson Wentz, the quarterback from the Philadelphia Eagles, with the AO1 Foundation. Kyle has his Connect Church and his nonprofit called Thy Kingdom Come. It's a food truck, and they deliver food for free and stuff like that and all. And in that episode, we talked about our roots. And I have to, it's not that I disagree, but I have to put a different slant on something JC was talking about when he was saying, we are, it's ingrained in us, the military and what we did and so forth. And my slant towards that is I love this idea of of human beings as a tree, a giant maple tree, if you will. What you see is what people perceive you to be. When you look at yourself in the mirror, people perceive you to be what you also see in the mirror. What we don't see, though, is what's underneath the ground, and that's our roots. And I will say, for me, speaking of me only, yes, I served in the military. Yes, I was in the Air Force. Yes, I was just a cop in the Air Force. But I am not a cop in the Air Force. That is not me any longer. It's not. What is me is going back to my youngest memories and utilizing those memories of, hypothetically, my grandfather, who was a World War II vet, grabbing me and bringing me into the ocean of Long Beach Island, New Jersey, and teaching me how to go under the waves, how to go over the waves, and how to fish and how to do all these things. And that root of, that's a man, in my opinion. He knew how to embrace a child. He knew that a child needed somebody like him in their life to teach little things that we think are little things, but they're not really little, because at almost, let's just say almost 50 years of age, I still think of that. And I still think about the impact that man had on me. My roots now are reflections of what I remember with memories that helped make me who I really am and who I want to be. And who I want to be is not a mirror image of my grandfather, but I want to be similar in that aspect that this guy was able to see things very unique that a lot of guys in his generation didn't do. And he might not have done it for his own son, for all I know. I don't know, because we didn't raise children the way how he was raising me in the summer months at Long Beach Island, New Jersey, where he embraced me. That's maybe the grandfatherly aspect of him. So I guess in a way, I'm kind of that old soul who says, no, I'm not a military guy. I'm not a Hollywood actor. I'm not a writer. I'm not any of these things. I'm a dad first. And that's what's most important to me, which kind of circles back to the very beginning of this conversation that you brought up, Charlie, was, what is most important to you? What do you embrace most in life? And I think from a nonprofit standpoint, that might be one of the biggest things missing in the conversation dealing with veterans. We often hear nonprofits talk about, well, this is what you did, this is that what you did. Guess what? None of that really matters anymore. I want to dig deeper. I want to have a conversation with a veteran that's way deeper than what they did while they served. I want to go back to when they were kids. I want to go back to those happy times that they remember. And some of them might not be happy.
Yeah, but see, I'm gonna come back. I want to push back on this, because I'm gonna tell you, I don't have one happy memory of my childhood. I had a crap childhood. And the first time I accomplished anything that was worth a shit was in the military. And I don't think I'm alone. I think a lot of us, hey, did I play sports? Did I do this? Yeah, but you know what? I was never the star athlete. I was on the team. I was never I had graduated high school with like a 79-point GPA. I graduated 112th out of 120.
Hey, that was 11 points higher than me.
So, so my, I did not have that if you go back for me, well, that just makes me feel worse. The first time that I can actually grab onto something and say, I accomplished that. Nobody helped me, but I was able to have the perseverance, the resiliency, whatever, to accomplish this. And do I think that we overemphasize on the, hey, you've done this great thing for the United States of America and we're going to take care of you? Yes, we do. But I think we have to be very thoughtful that I don't have those memories that you can go back to. My roots, quite honestly, they're kind of shallow.
Hold on
Like
though.
if a strong wind comes, I'm I'm trying to keep my language good. I'm kind of screwed because big tree fall hard.
Yeah, but hold on. With that though, with that, it might not have been happy times. It might not have been. However, they were memories that you utilized, I guarantee you, at one point or another, as fuel to your fire to achieve something bigger than yourself, and that helped you develop and become the man that you are today. And I
Yes.
think that's where the balance now comes into play. Maybe it's not happy times, maybe it's horrible times, but hold on, let's talk about it's still your roots, and we can still use those roots no matter if they're good or bad to create a positive and to
Yes.
create the fuel to grow those branches out and make
And
the impact you
and
need.
I think that's what good coaches do is they first of all, what you're asking takes a lot of self-awareness. So coaches have to give some of that self-awareness and teach their athletes how to have that self-awareness. And then they have to delve down into those deeper roots and take those bad things and say, well, and I call it hunt the good, right? They got to hunt the good. It's so easy to find the bad. But I tell coaches, Coach, what's the best thing you see out on this field right now? Well, they're doing that drill jacked up and that drill. So look at what they're doing. Great. I got it. We're trained as leaders to identify what's wrong with stuff. We're never trained to identify what's right. I mean, but that happens, and we're conditioned that way because the teacher doesn't mark what's right on your paper; she marks what's wrong on your paper, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that is how we are conditioned as humans. So now we've got to hunt the good. So now we have a bad situation, and we sit there and go, and can I tell you, hey, did my experiences as a child impact how I did things? Yep. I learned how not to be a parent. I learned, okay, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. Um, but I didn't, I needed a coach. And luckily I ended up having my father to help me with that. Much later though, my formative years, which should have been in my teens, were like in my 20s.
Yeah.
And my father was able to point out and go, look, yeah, you did that. Cool. What'd you get out of it? What are you taking forward? And for me, it was, I'm never going to treat my kid that way. And I think I've done a good job of that so far. I mean, two of them are adults, so they're on their own.
Right,
Uh,
but and see, and that's the point though. You took the negative and turned it into a positive. It might have been later in life, but you still did it. And I think that's not trying to pat your own back because your backside is kind of gross in my opinion. No, I'm just kidding. But like honestly, you deserve a pat on the back. You did something that a lot of people don't understand is critical, especially, and I hate being that guy, but a lot of veterans don't understand how critical that is to succeed even when you get out. They oftentimes, and it's not just veterans, it's adults in general, they sulk and they beat themselves up and they say how horrible things were, but they rarely ever say how awesome things can be by taking the bad and making lessons out of those bads and turning those lessons into positives.
so, and I think it's a perfect segue to, so Charlie, how do you do that as a coach? How do you help whatever, whether you're coaching the tactical athlete or the traditional athlete, because athletes all do that, right? They make a mistake and they sulk. They're on a losing streak and they sulk. They're right. Everything's bad. How do you get them to that next, to see the next hilltop for being a better place?
I think that's a great question, and I think the way that we do it in the military, I think this translates onto the athletic field as well, is to see failures as a learning experience that gets you to the next level of performance. Of course, we don't want to encourage behavior that's failing. We don't want to reinforce failure, but we do want to reinforce learning. and we accept those prudent risks that people take. If you're on the athletic field or in the battlefield or just in life and business in general, sometimes you got to take risks and sometimes they don't pay off. So if that was a prudent risk, then we accept that and we move on. If it was a foolish gamble, then we hold people accountable for it. So to answer your question directly, JC, I think that we encourage a culture, which takes a long time to develop, that failure is okay if you're doing it in good faith. So I think, hey, that play didn't work. Let's run it again. Let's try this. You dropped the ball this time. You failed in this regard, but we progress and we move on and we make people better that way. So I think that's how you get after it.
Yeah, I had General Clark, who's now the SOCOM commander, was my first Ranger Battalion commander, and I came in. I was doing probably my fifth combat tour, and came in. He said, "Hey, what are your goals for this deployment?" I said what we all said. Well, I'm going to bring all my guys back. And he goes, "Stop. That's the dumbest thing you could possibly say." And I'd never heard that. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I mean, as cadets, we're told every mistake you make on the battlefield, and that's a body bag, and that's on you. That's your
That's
fault.
right.
And he said, "Here's the deal. The enemy gets a vote, and you're going to make the best decision you can. And you know what? Sometimes you're going to make a mistake. You're not going to have the information you should have had. You're going to guess wrong. And the cost of your mistake is going to be somebody's life. But if that mistake is not born of negligence, it's okay.
That's
It's
right.
all right. Drive on, JC. It's okay." Now, I was shocked at that. Like, those are his Rangers too. He's basically saying that if I screw up and somebody dies, but it wasn't from negligence, it's all right. Don't worry. Keep going. And then I had a buddy in another unit that didn't have him as a commander who lost a guy in combat, and he became combat ineffective because he had been inundated with what we all had as cadets, as young NCOs. You make a mistake on the battlefield, somebody dies, that's on you, that's your fault. And so he became afraid to make mistakes. He became afraid to do anything, and he was useless, and he had to end up getting relieved. And I always tell this to my sports coaches. I always say, if I have a guy who I really respect, who's seen a lot of combat and obviously is, just a tremendous leader, if that guy can look me in the eye and say, if you lose somebody, it's okay, can't you drop a ball? You know,
Exactly.
can't you strike out? Really? And it's a powerful, but people don't think that we in the military think like that. And it sounded at first, I think it sounds cold to a lot of people, but I think it's about accepting that stuff happens.
That's absolutely right. And the only sure way to ensure that you never fail is to never try anything.
Yeah.
So if you're going to lose somebody, you're going to lose something, you're going to lose a game. And I was laughing when you mentioned General Clark. So he was the commander of the task force I supported my last deployment to Afghanistan. And he was an amazing leader and had a great memory and a great way with troops. And then he was a commandant at West Point when I went back there, when I went there to teach. I'm not a West Point grad, I did RTC. But when I went there, he was the commandant. So, of course, I went to pay my respects. Very gracious in his big office up there in Washington Hall. We had a nice long talk. And it was very interesting to me to see how he adapted his leadership style to being the commander of the Ranger Regiment to being the commandant of cadets. It was very different leadership style. The first thing I went to with him at West Point, he was up on stage cracking jokes and they were funny and everybody was laughing. And I was like, this is not Afghanistan anymore. So I'm glad to see how successful he won, 82nd and now SOCOM. What a great leader. And I'm glad we share that common experience and the opinion of General Clark.
Amazing.
Well, I think at the end of the day, Charlie, you're doing one amazing thing for a lot of folks, and it's not just the veteran community. Let's be honest. For every veteran you have, the odds are that veteran has somebody in his or her life, whether it be a parent, a brother, a sister, nephew, aunt, uncle, whoever, spouse. And every time you impact a veteran's life, you're impacting the life of somebody else. So you have the second and third orders of effect. God, I hate the term, but it's true. And, it's one of those things that I like in the aspect that again, it's not one of those, hey, let's just bring exposure to something. It's truly an action, but it's an action that helps a veteran with knowledge. It helps a veteran with creating the aspiration to go further than what they have already accomplished in their military career. And that's further in their new life, you know? And when we look at stuff like that, knowing that this show is a part of that mission, the second mission, it's humbling in many ways, to say it lightly. Um, and I got to say, JC, I know you are associated in the sporting world with some really interesting individuals, professional athletes, professional coaches. You know of some organizations. And what I would love to see is, at a bare minimum, if we could get this show, the link sent to some of those contacts around the United States, so they can see what the second mission is doing, and have those organizations potentially become a part of the second mission, so we could get more veterans involved in the athletic world through mentorship and coaching and so forth. Because there was an episode recently that JC brought it up. He was like, I would love to see more veterans involved on the sidelines. And how can you argue that, considering we know that NFL teams bring in Navy SEALs, to talk about teamwork, God forbid, or another organization, it's just, I have to say Navy SEALs because that's the first thing that comes to mind, because they do everything in public these days for quiet professionals. But the point being is, we know of organizations, we know of personalities, and as a coach who's working with kids today, I know how cathartic it is as a veteran to have that second purpose in life and to try to reach the lives of others, because one day we all know we're not going to be here, but it's our duty to help mentor and mold those who are going to replace us. So my hat is tipped to you. If you could tell the audience, how can we find more information on your organization, Charlie?
Carrie, thank you first of all for having me on the show, and second of all for that ring endorsement from you and JC. As leaders in the veteran community, there's no higher endorsement for our organization than you two, so thank you. Also, the easiest way to do it is check out our website, secondmission.org, secondmissionfoundation.org, and they could check out the site. They can see how they can help us, but more importantly, how we can help them and other veterans through our advocacy, through elevating the veteran community, and by simple education. So I think that's the best way to do it. Check out our site and let us know how we can help the community. And thanks again for having me on the show, guys.
You got it, brother. Hey, JC.
Yeah.
This might be the first show where I thought to myself, man, JC is going to take this show and run with it. And you've had some quiet time in here, and I wonder if any of us on the other end might have struck a nerve or something. I'm a little concerned about it.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm in one of those transition periods again, and so I sit here and I think, okay, there was a lot of time spent thinking about what I'm going through now is like what athletes go through during a season or in between seasons, and or an athlete who's looking for a second season, or maybe his reemergence from reinvention, and so this was definitely a cathartic one, and anytime you two are involved, there's a lot of catharsis anyway. But I want to know, how can I help your organization, aside from what we'll do on the show, and we'll put the link up there, and I'll send the link out. I've Jay Glazier, who runs MVP and brings players, former NFL players and former soldiers together in California for some holistic treatment. I'm trying to help a lot of that kind of stuff. But what you're doing, you're really talking about making that transition. Somebody who comes to the subway with you, there's a million trains to get on, but helps you figure out which is your right train.
That's a great analogy, JC. And the big thing that we need right now, your guys are doing it for us. So we've got a great organization, but right now we're so new that a lot of people don't know about it. So this, first of all, this is amazing. This is very helpful. but also we need to know what people need. So I have an idea based on my experiences in my small circle of friends of what's needed in America's veteran service community, but I don't know. So for example, I don't know everything that a former security contractor needs. I don't know that everything that a veteran who's now a coach needs. So I'm looking for ideas, JC. So the exposure you guys give us is great. And then I'm looking for ideas of where we can put all this effort, all this momentum, all this funds that we have coming in to the best use. So if you or your listeners can give me some ideas of where you see needs, so we can look at that, rack it, stack it in our list of priorities, and get after it, that would be enormously helpful as well.
Good, good. Yeah. So I'll try to be less quiet. You know, maybe you guys cannot say, you know, things about my childhood or whatever. Get me to have this faraway look on my face and go, oh, geez, yeah, bring it back.
I'm gonna have to call you in an hour and be like, hey, buddy, you okay? You know,
Yeah.
you want a shoulder?
Here's the honest to God truth. Two guys that I truly admire their brains were talking, and I've learned that when people in the room smarter than you are talking, you keep your mouth shut. So that's the truth. I mean, it was just, well, you don't look it when you do that, um, but I really, I value both of you so much. And, you know, I enjoyed, I don't know about the listeners if they enjoyed it, but I enjoyed listening to you guys today.
Just on a whim, a little bulb went off in my head, and we know statistically, youth sports are on a decline in America. Referees are on a serious decline in America.
Huge.
Okay, huge. Coaches are on a decline in America. Here's what I would like, and here's my challenge to the three of us. I would like, through the Second Mission Foundation, we hold a live event, not online, I mean in person. And we get our assets, we get our resources, and we come together at a specific community. It doesn't have to be here. It could be somewhere we know is in dire need of a rebirth of a program of a sort where it's sports oriented. And we hold a conference where part of that day we bring kids in and we say, what do you guys do? We want to hear from you. What do you want? What do you need? Blah, blah, blah. And we really dissect it. And then the second part of that day, we have adults that are parents, future coaches, previous coaches, school administrators, and so forth. And we say, hey, guys, this is what we uncovered. And by the way, we talked for a good hour and we had a little round robin meeting with ideas on how to really start building that foundation that these kids are talking about with their wants, desires, and needs. And as veterans, we're going to pull our resources of other veterans in this area to help build exactly what you're talking about. We can't force you on any of it, but we sure as heck could lead you to the water that you really need to start drinking. I'm just saying, I think it's a potential, and I think it could be a unique challenge between this show, Coaching the Coach, and all of our guests and your organization, Charlie. Something we can hash out later on.
Challenge accepted. I think that's an amazing idea, and we'll put some thought and some resources into it. And then maybe one day, if I didn't dork this up too badly on your show, you have me back, and I can talk to you and you and JC and your viewers about what our plan is for that. So challenge accepted, brother.
Awesome, man. And of course, you're always accepted. Ladies and gentlemen, go to the secondmissionfoundation.org. It's actually secondmissionfoundation.org. Check it out. Get to see and understand what's going on with that. And by the way, if you're a military veteran, if you are a former contractor, if you are a first responder, there is one of the greatest assets for you in your own personal growth and your own enlightenment and healing, if you will, comes in the form of community service, and really comes in the form of getting out there on the playing field and help mentor and guide our children here in America, our youth that are trying to do something bigger and better than themselves. actually on the playing field. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show today. Charlie Faint, thank you so much for being here. JC, as always, I will catch up with you real soon. And again, check it out, secondmissionfoundation.org. Brought to you in part by the Second Mission Foundation.